Well, we're joined by, the nature of technology, by Eoin Sheahan in Japan. Eoin, good morning.
The 21st century, John. It's amazing. It's a very good morning to you.
Yeah, I hope you're having a great time out there, Eoin. I think did you have your kilt on this morning? You were with the Scots.
No, I didn't quite have my kilt on. I was in a bit of a hurry, actually, to get to the press conference today, so I didn't have the correct attire for all the Scottish journalists and for the Scotland team itself. You can see them actually in a nice Japanese garden that they have outside the back of their hotel. The Scotland team actually have only just got up to this part of the country. They've spent the last couple of days in Nagasaki, which really is in direct contrast to how Ireland have tried to deal with their opening week in Japan. They've obviously just been staying out the road in Chiba. Scotland went all the way down south to Nagasaki, so they've gone for a completely different feel altogether. So they're only getting used to this part of the country at the moment. If you're talking about where we are in Tokyo, we're kind of in the south side of the city at the moment. You're between a couple of big areas. You've got Minato City, just a little bit north of here, and then Shinagawa City, just a little bit south of here. I'll get on a train in a little while, which will take me about 40 minutes to get down to Yokohama, which is where the Ireland team are staying. But it was an interesting enough press conference this morning. You had Peter Horne, you had Stuart Hogg, and you had Danny Wilson all up for media, and I asked Danny Wilson about Ireland this morning.
You say you're focusing on yourself, but England have hammered Ireland twice this calendar year. Wales gave them a good battering at the end of the Six Nations as well. How much have you looked at those three fixtures in terms of a way to beat Ireland?
Well, we've looked at all fixtures, if I'm being honest, in the recent games that they've played, and as mentioned, they're ranked number one in the world. Then they're a good side. They're well drilled, well coached, and definitely they've had their ups and downs. And I think in these games recently, like us, you try things, you experiment with things. You don't necessarily reveal your full game plan going into your first game. So we're fully aware. All teams, I think, have done that. So that gives you sometimes your ups and your downs that Ireland have had, that we've had, that everyone's had.
Do you think they deserve to be anywhere within the top three in the world? Do they deserve the number one tag?
Well, I think they're one of the best teams in the world, yeah. And I think we've seen those performances in recent times. There's no doubt about that. They've had some huge wins, and we can all list them off. They've also had maybe their odd result that they wouldn't be happy with, but like I said, they're full of quality players, they're quality coaches. So we're certainly fully aware that we go into the game playing against a very good team.
So, Eoin, the Ireland press conference is happening very shortly. We're expecting an injury update on Rob Kearney and Keith Earls.
We certainly are. There is uncertainty surrounding the two of them, more uncertainty than, say, Robbie Henshaw. I think it's pretty clear that Robbie Henshaw is not going to play this weekend. In 7 days' time, we'll maybe be having more of a conversation about whether or not Rob Kearney will be fit to play Japan, but we are very much having a conversation right now about whether or not Keith Earls and Rob Kearney will be fit to play. They did appear in training this morning, the training section that allows vision access, and really Robbie Henshaw was the only absentee from that vision section of today's training session in Chiba. But there is still going to be a question mark. We'll find out from Andy Farrell, who's before the media a little bit later on this morning, about the full extent of their injuries or how they're getting on. Because the thing about Keith Earls is not just the recovery from injury. He doesn't have a whole pile of test minutes under his belt at the moment. Rob Kearney, the injury happened on Tuesday, or on Monday, I should say. So it happened kind of late in the day for him as well. So there are two big question marks. The question is, who would come in for them were they to be absent? And you'd probably be looking at the likes of Andrew Conway and Jordan Larmour or players like that at this point.
Are there any concerns about the weather on Sunday? People were talking about typhoons and maybe the game would be abandoned and all that kind of thing. Is that just hot air?
It wasn't hot air, John. There was certainly a risk of that. For example, in Chiba, there is a possibility that tens of thousands of people could be evacuated due to threats from mudslides. You can probably make out behind me you've got grey skies, and it is still lashing down here in this part of Tokyo. So it's going to be more precipitation that's going to be the issue in this part of the country. The typhoon that hit Chiba badly over the last about 2 weeks ago at this point, those sort of conditions haven't been replicated since I've been here. And really, it seems that the weather has eased off a little bit. It's going to be a bit more benign in those circumstances when it comes to this Sunday. So a rainy day, a wet ball is what we expect, but we do expect the match to certainly go ahead.
Owen, what's it like? What's Japan like? What adventures have you been undertaking over the last 24 hours?
It's an amazing country, John. Tokyo is like a country in itself, really. You think that you know how to deal with a big city when you've been to another massive city, say like New York. But even Tokyo is on a completely different scale to this. It's like 5 Manhattans in one city. When I was planning logistically for this, I thought to myself, well, if I'm 2 tube stops away from a certain point, then that point is very walkable from the other point. And that's not the case at all. You spend a lot of time on trains here, been over and back to Chiba every day, across the river, past Disneyland, as I mentioned yesterday, to get to Chiba every day. Down south to Yokohama isn't going to be so bad a trek from Tokyo, but it is an unbelievable city. I've been into Shinjuku, which is the main area in the city centre, quite a few times because I'm staying quite close by over the past couple of nights. And really, the lights, the colour, the atmosphere in the city centre of Tokyo is second to none. It will swallow up any tournament that takes place here. There's no question about that. We will not probably see evidence in Tokyo city centre of the Irish on tour here or the Scots on tour here. We will see that later in the tournament when we get to see the rest of Japan, when we get to see more rural areas. But here it's very much Tokyo first and Tokyo people first. And in the little corner, you've got a rugby tournament going on. Now, the thing is, Ireland obviously aren't playing in Tokyo. They're playing down in Yokohama. So I'd imagine match day and the main thoroughfares down in that part, just south of Tokyo, will be a lot more vociferous when it comes to the noise you'll hear from Irish fans, with the colours that you'll see from Irish fans being in the country. But so far, so good, John. Truly enjoy. Like the one thing about this country is that everybody here is so unbelievably nice. You have to go looking for trouble if you want to find trouble. It certainly will not find you. The other day, for example, I left a tripod behind in Tokyo Station, one of the biggest stations in the country, one of the biggest stations in the world. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people would have walked right past that piece of equipment. Granted, it was a pretty cheap tripod. I'm not sure why anybody would want a cheap tripod. But when I came back for it half an hour or an hour later, it was still sitting in the exact same place. The other thing I've noticed about this country as well is that it is impeccably clean. You don't see a single piece of litter anywhere. I don't think I've seen a single piece of litter on every street I've walked down. But also, a line to that is the fact that there aren't any bins. You carry your rubbish yourself and you dump it at home. So I'm not sure. We learned something there in terms of our own clean streets, John.
Oh, and you are big in Japan. And we're going to talk to you over the next 24 hours at the World Cup. And just stay safe and get yourself to Yokohama.
Thanks, John. We'll chat to you tomorrow morning. Just one quick thing before I go. Here's some more content from this morning's press conference with the Scottish players and management. Here's what else they had to say about Ireland.
Yeah, I don't think as a coaching group or as a playing group we get too concerned about the speculation. I think once you get confirmation of the team you're facing, you then look into a little bit more detail. You can kind of second guess things and overthink it if you don't. We're concentrating, as cliche as it sounds, we're concentrating very much on ourselves, our game plan, and our standard training.
Ireland have got some incredible players, and the quality that you've just mentioned, if Can is to be out and Conway is to come in, then that's another world-class player that we've got to be fully aware of. And look, whatever team Ireland put out on Sunday, we're going to have to match it and beat it. So it's exciting times for us. If they play their best team or they play boys that haven't got as much experience, then it's still an incredibly huge challenge for us.
Have you looked at trying to expose them in the back three?
I think our game plan, there's a lot of different parts to the puzzle, and without giving too much away, I think we're just concentrating on ourselves and making sure that we don't beat ourselves, we don't make too many silly errors, and make sure that we might get 5 or 6 opportunities in the game to get some points on the board, and we've got to make sure we make the most of every single opportunity we're given.